Good morning and a very warm welcome to our council meeting today for the 5th of May, another month gone. And welcome to all of those on Zoom. We're not quite at normal yet. Hopefully our next council meeting will be back to some sort of normal, but thank you for joining us by Zoom and to our team around the table. Very warm welcome, Hazim. Good to see you again. Thank you for joining us this morning, and I'll hand it over to you to open in prayer.
Thank you very much. Likewise, it's an honor and a privilege to meet all of you this morning. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So without any further dues, I will say my prayers in Arabic and then I'll explain what do they mean in English. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت واصرف عنا برحمتك شر ما قدرت وقضيت إنك تقضي بالحق سبحانك ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معصيتك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. So thank you very much. Pretty much the essence of what I said is that I prayed to the Lord to keep us guided on the right path, and to give every single individual of you, the executive team and the governance team, the wisdom and the guidance to see the truth and realize that it's the truth and act upon it properly, and to show us all falsehood and to guide us to avoid acting wrongly. And I also pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bestow blessings and glad tidings on the people governing this body, which is the Manawatū District Council. In an essence, this is what I said. In a way or another, this is what it means. You are the people in charge of Manawatū district area, and you need the guidance. You need to be able to see what's right and what's wrong and act upon it properly for the best interest of your organization. So in an essence, that's what I said, and that's what these are all the prayers that I just made.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to update all of you, 2 days ago, Muslims around the world celebrated Eid al-Fitr. The month of Ramadan has finished, and with that, that ends the holy month of Ramadan, in which Muslims around the whole world were fasting every day between dawn till sunset. For about, it was 29 days this year, and as you all aware, it's ended up with prayers and celebrations and charities and etc. etc. So it wasn't easy during the restrictions of COVID-19. Unfortunately, every Ramadan there is, so we were gathering in daily iftars, but it didn't happen this year because of COVID-19 restrictions, which we had to abide by, same as any New Zealand citizen. But maybe with that in mind, we are hopeful that next year there will be no limitations and things will be back to normal. So that is the update from the community. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I wish you a blessed and a fruitful day and a fruitful meeting.
Thank you, Hazim. Thank you for joining us this morning and your words of wisdom. And yeah, you too. Thank you and have a great day. We'll catch up with you next time.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. executives and governance team. Appreciate your opportunity, this opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Right, moving item 2, apologies. We have none. We have a full team, some by Zoom, so that's great. No requests for leave. So we can move straight to item 4, which is on page 6. This is the confirmation of minutes. For a mover and a seconder, please.
Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held 21st of April 2022 be adopted as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Have a mover. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Casey. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5, declaration of interest. Any topics on the agenda today that elected members need to declare? No, none on Zoom either. Excellent. Right.
We should not elect members, excuse me. Obviously, a conflict in terms of item 11.1 in terms of my role at council.
Thank you. Yes, 11.1 of the Manawatū Park Trust. Thank you. And I should also note, under apologies, our Chief Executive, he was hoping to join us by Zoom. He's not been well.
Yes, he is. He's there.
He's there.
Yep.
There somewhere. Oh yeah, he is too. Just can't see his pretty face. Shane, hopefully you're on the mend, and look forward to seeing you back hopefully next week. So moving on, we have no public forum, presentations or late items, no recommendations from committees or minutes from other committees at this meeting, so we can go straight into the officers' report. We're on page 20, and this is the Manawatū Park Trust, their 6 monthly report. Very warm welcome to the team on Zoom. Kathy, I see you there with your team. Brian, there. We've got Stephen, Stella, John, and Kathy and Adrian. So very warm welcome. I'll hand it over to you. We have your report here, and you're welcome to take us through the highlights and then be available for questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to take the lead. Lynn, there's nothing by way of introduction from your point of view?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. So by way of introduction, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to, as the chair, cover off a brief introduction, and then I'm going to hand over to Kathy. And as you've noted, we've got the rest of the board, John, Stella, and Stefan. And we also thought it useful to invite our other settlers to this public presentation, if you like, in terms of the 6 month, come 9.5 month report. So with that, first of all, thank you to Council for indulging a delay. I'm aware that the other Council CCOs and Council organisations presented back in April. And due to both annual leave for Kathy as our Chief Executive and myself as the board chair, we had to defer to today. So thank you for the indulgence on that. The report has been circulated. I'm going to take that as read, as we tend to do, and just speak to a few of the highlights. I guess from a chair's point of view, in a Manfield events-based business, I'm hoping that this is the last year that we refer to COVID in any way, shape, or form. It's been a thorn in all of our sides, and probably an excuse for many things not happening, but also a genuine reason for why things haven't happened. So we've had, as a direct result of COVID, and also the restrictions that the government rules and the regulations have put on the viability of running events, we've had a number of events that have been cancelled. And those events have been cancelled by the organisers. It's not Manawatū Park Trust which is refusing to hold them or unable to hold them. And I think we don't have representation from the Fielding IAMP Association, but I can think to a number of equestrian events that I think working closely with the trust management around how we can actually make these events happen in a COVID constrained environment. So really, what I've seen from a governance level across the trust is a can-do, make it happen, open for business attitude, and I'll make mention of both the both Kathy and Adrian who are on board in terms of the two key senior staff that have done a lot of the work behind the scenes. And that really is despite the COVID environment that we're working within. So the report that was circulated is the profit and loss sort of summary as at the 31st of December. You'll see on there just a couple of key points. If you look at the beginning of the budget, we were forecasting around about a 200k sort of net return, if you like. As of mid-year, we've downgraded that by about half to 120. And if you refer to the report that Kathy's put together, you'll see that at this point in time, we're looking towards about a 50k loss, or somewhere between there and break even. And so as we look at the events that have been cancelled, and Kathy may speak to some of those in more detail, but the likes of the field days is an obvious example, and a significant revenue that sits with that, which takes a big chunk of that bottom line out in one take. So I'll leave Kathy to speak to sort of the more operational aspects of the report and the park. And I guess as we sit here in May, I don't know how much value there is in talking about the June to December period. We've got a good sort of picture of where things are sitting to date. And I guess from the trust board perspective, it's really looking into a post-COVID environment, where to from here, and what does the business look like going forward. So the report covers off some of the highlights of the National Driver Training Centre, which has been a really good news story for the Manawatū Park Trust to date. The continuation of our debt repayment program and the financial prudence that sort of sits in behind that, despite the reduced revenues and event income that we've had. And thirdly, the continued investment in the park as a whole, with site infrastructure improvements, some of our thinking ahead that we've done as a board and as a management team, and also sort of trying to get a handle on the wider deferred maintenance. And I think as I sit in the trust role, but also think of in terms of my NDC infrastructural role, there's probably 15 years of deferred maintenance, which sits as a liability on the trust going forward. And so that won't go away overnight, and that's a big part of the work that's been done to look at a plan around catching up on that maintenance, looking at sort of the larger renewals, and then looking at in terms of capital investment, and Kathy may speak to some of that. And I think just to underpin all of what I've just outlined from a trust point of view, and particularly from the chair's perspective, I look at the business plan. So effectively, Manawatū Park Trust's annual plan through to the end of June this year. There's a number of sort of key outcomes and key focus areas in there. So things like the diversity of the business in terms of the range and type of events that we have, and what parts of the park can be used and utilised across those diverse range of events. Secondly, looking at the fit-for-purpose IT and business systems, and that's been a focus of the last probably 2 years in terms of bringing a lot of that together. Thirdly is the financial prudence and stability. And so we know that we have a constrained financial environment. We know that there is debt sitting within the park. And despite all the grand plans that we'd love to do, that needs to be done in a prudent and financially responsible way. I think the re-engagement with the settlers is something that I know our management team and board have spoken a lot about. We have 3 key settlers who are our key stakeholders, and a big focus of the board and management has been how we work more closely with those settlers going forward. Underpinning some of that is the asset utilisation and infrastructural improvement, which I've touched on already, and particularly the likes of the stadium and what we can do to get more utilisation, more use, and therefore more income of that. And probably underpinning all of that, and one of the key outputs in the business plan was around the creation of a staff structure to essentially deliver on all of that. So I know what we've had to date has been sort of what we've always had. I know that the management team, led by Kathy, has put a lot of time and effort into looking at the staff structure, the capacity and capabilities, and we've worked closely with Stella, essentially in a portfolio lead sort of perspective, if you like, around that HR and capacity and talent management. So working across the board and working closely with Kathy and Adrian to look at what staffing we need by way of events management, by way of business development, and the operational side to be able to deliver on those business plan outcomes, and continue to try and deliver for the community, deliver for the settlers, and do it in a financially responsible and prudent way. So with that, Kathy, I will hand over to you if there's any specifics you want to run through, and then we'll take a round table from there. at her worship's discretion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Hamish. And firstly, we're very pleased to have an opportunity to meet with council, because it's been quite a long time since we've had a chance to get together. And obviously there's a few of you that we've interfaced with from time to time, but it's really good that we've got an opportunity to have a good discussion this morning. So thank you for that. You will see from our report that we have made significant progress turning the financial side of our business around. This is critical in order to take the potential of Manfield Park to the next level. And one of the things I'd just like to focus on is we're now reporting internally between management and the board. We're reporting against 5 cost centres. And this is allowing us to really focus in on making each one of those cost centres profitable. It also drives the marketing focus to generate new business. And an example of this is one of the things we talk around about at the board table is that we do need to lift our stadium usage. And we're already focused on potential new clients that may help us with this. And the other point is we separated out our cost centres so that we could look intently at the National Driver Training Centre, and particularly as that came on stream as a new asset for Manfield Park Trust. And since November last year, our new NDTC facility has been our most profitable business unit. So that's very good in the short space of time that it's been operating. So I'm not going to dwell on the impacts of COVID either. We all know the challenges that the pandemic has presented. So I'm just going to focus on a couple of core highlights from the report. To date, actually, as of last week, in this financial year, we've brought on 29 new clients, and some of these clients are very different to those types of clients Manfield's worked with before. This is part of our, I guess, strategy to diversify our client base. And we're very pleased that some of those clients are now providing us with repeat business, which is great. A few of the immediate core areas of focus that we want to share. Firstly, the focus of the team now that we have our structure in place, and we're very pleased that we are fully resourced again after a hiatus probably of 2 years. We're actively looking at client engagement to fill our events calendar for the next financial year with quality commercial and community events that'll add revenue to our business. And we are having some challenges juggling dates, particularly for weekend dates with new events, but that's a very good problem to have, I might say. Second area is we're strengthening our base of suppliers to add value to our business. And this is the whole concept of what do we manage in-house and what do we contract out. We know the benefits financially and timeliness on contracting out to specialised providers, and that's an area that we've made some progress on in this financial year, but we're continuing to look at that concept, because I think if we bring specialists on board that can add good value to our business, it gives us some opportunity to engage with them in other areas of our business. For example, some of our suppliers are using us for small meetings, from time to time. So, I think the strengthening of those relationships is very important. Hamish mentioned the 15 years of deferred maintenance, and I just wanted to give you an example of what we're talking about with this. We've spent probably 5 weeks so far on cleaning our stadium roof. It had never been cleaned, and the supplier or contractor that's been working with us has taken 30 large bags of lichen and moss off that stadium roof. It is a very large footprint. But the other part that we've done in that project is we've looked at all the flashings that we have. We've looked at, is the roof still fit for purpose? And we've actually upgraded or tacked down some of the areas of weakness. And so that project is close, probably about 15 or 20, probably 20K in total. We've got another couple of days next week to finish that off. And that's an example of, we've got lots of examples like that across the park where the current board and management team are catching up on some of that deferred maintenance. So, you know, work in progress. We're developing a staged and planned program of deferred maintenance and also new infrastructure. And obviously that dovetails with our considerable effort in adding revenue through our events. So like to open up for any questions, please.
Thanks, thanks, Kathy. Good report. Couple of questions I had. You mentioned in the report that you had to pay back some of the PGF funding that was unused, but then you also said that you had to put 800K of your own money in. I'm assuming the unused tag money didn't fit to be able to use for the other that you had to contribute yourself.
Yes, the money that we didn't draw down against a loan. We had $2.255 million in a loan, and we didn't need to utilise that full loan. There were obligations within our contract with MB that we had to provide some funding ourselves, so that relates to the 800,000.
Great, thank you. And really good to hear about some of the new client areas. And I don't want to break confidentiality, but can you tell us the kind of areas that they work in? Are they clients as in the driver training centre or using the Manfield in total?
Good question, Helen. And obviously some of them we can't talk about. We're increasing our reach with corporate clients. It's an area of core focus that we've been working on, and some of those are repeat clients that we've had. We're also strengthening our partnership with iwi, and we've done some good events with iwi as well. And also we've got a very strong and loyal client base emerging with NDTC. Most of those are corporate. Okay, excellent. And my final question is around new events. Given that we were involved in an initiative to help out the rugby at the time they needed it, has there been any further discussion about potential in the future for rugby event some sort to be at Manfield? You asked that question last time we met, and we haven't progressed any discussions with MRU at this stage, but obviously when we're looking at our whole client base and diversity and new events, you know, we have not lost sight of engaging in the sports space. Okay, and the only other one was the potential for the polo, the horse polo to come and have a trial at Manfield. Has that got anywhere? Again, not at this stage. That's for a more detailed discussion with our settlers first. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's open it up to the team for any further questions. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. And I too had that question around the 317,000 not used. And the first thing that went through my mind is how one could be creative to actually efficiently and legitimately use it. Look, whether you can or not, of the new clients that you're pushing, can you give us an indication of those that might be are local as opposed to from or more national, or from further afield than just the local demographic?
Probably, I can talk generically regarding that, and obviously in our annual report to council we can hone in a little bit more on that. But the national corporates, very strong in terms of our NDTC business. And so we're dealing nationally in that space, definitely. Probably more around the corporate side is more local and regional at this stage.
And just to follow on, Your Worship, and good to see that you're doing a bit of stuff with Ngāti Kaupapa. Is anybody making any money out of it?
Yes, we are. We did a very good initiative with our iwi partners around motorhome training with National Driver Training Centre. They were fortunate enough to source some new mobile health vehicles. We provided all the driver training for up to about 40 of their key people, and that was a new tailored course we developed from bottom up.
I think that could have been an entertainment event almost, watching motorhomes having a bit of a speed session around the track. I think we could have all enjoyed that.
If I could jump in there, Councillor, thank you. I think you're right. It was the long wheelbase sort of vans, and it was the health initiative to provide local with a capacity to sort of have an outreach service in the community. And we've got these quite large vehicles and a whole group of people who've never driven them before. There was a large opportunity which was taken on board to train them and the like.
Excellent. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your report, Kathy and Hamish and the team. Quite a few encouraging things there for me that I was pleased to hear. Number one, the re-engagement with the settlers. I understand that in the past there's been a bit of conflict between some of the settlers and the board, so I'm pleased to hear that that's improved. Number two, the staffing issues. You've obviously had a fairly big shake-up or change around in staffing recently, and again, I understand in times past, in my opinion, there's been significant overstaffing down there, so I think that by the look of it, you seem to address that. And thirdly, the finances, given that it's been a particularly difficult couple of years, looking at the numbers, they're pretty good really, in terms of the environment you've had to operate, to still generate, what is it, 1.5 million roughly in turnover, is pretty good, I reckon, for this time. So well done. Couple of questions from me. The MB loan shown in the balance sheet there at the end of December is the Provincial Growth Fund monies, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you. As a neighbour of the park, I just worked across the street from it. I noticed a very big number of people walking their dogs there.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, well used. And the other thing is, the last point is about equestrian events there. You do have some pretty significant equestrian events, but I'm not a horse person myself, but I do know quite a few people that do compete there, and the comment that I've had from those is the lack of shade and the lack of trees, and I think that's something you should really address. With some decent shade trees there, you could really rival the Hawke's Bay Showgrounds, and that's, I think, the one thing that competitors really miss and want to see there. So if you could address that and plant some decent big shade trees across the park, I think you could really turn that into a top-class equestrian event centre. And maybe I'd like to put that on your list of things to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And one of the interesting things, you will have seen that there was a dinosaur event during the last school holidays on the railway land in Palmerston North. We had very detailed discussions regarding bringing that to Manfield, and one of the reasons why we were unsuccessful was our lack of trees. So I think your comment about perhaps planting some trees, definitely on our radar. I guess we've got to prioritise what's most important first, but definitely we would like to plant some more trees. We might open a community project where people could donate a tree. That might be a way that we can start to increase the shade, because it is absolutely, you're right, it's needed.
Ample at the end of that.
Councillor Marsh.
Good morning, Kathy and team. Good to see you. I'm down the corner. And just a note on whether you want to actually change that in the report. And again, it's around the MB loan and the fact that states there 2.8 million, whereas your comments just before that you picked up the 2.2 million. And then the 317 goes back, then equates to the 1.9 in your financials. So I was just wondering whether that change needed to be made in the report.
Yes, you're correct. We've got two parts to that $2.8 million loan. The 2255 is a loan. The balance of the 2.8 was a grant. And yes, thank you for that comment. We'll pick that up. I think coming back to Councillor Hadfield's message or comment, the money that we returned was tagged funding. And so, that level of funding cannot be repurposed into anything else. It was specifically for the capital build. And we're very, very proud that we came in with that capital build under budget. That's a bit unusual in the current environment. So the fact that we did not use that funding, I think, was a positive. And obviously longer term, when we start to need to look at that repayment of that loan in 5 years' time, it's not as great as it would have been had we spent that money.
Thank you.
Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your report. Just a question re the National Driver Training Centre, particularly the class 2 to 5 or 2 to 6, whatever it is, the non-car driver licence classes. How are we going? How's that growing? And how are we performing in comparison with our competitors around the country, please?
I'll ask Adrian to speak to that.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, good morning. Oh.
You have to turn your volume off.
Is that better? No, that's not better. I might shift over to Kathy's.
Just put yours. Yeah, if you're in the same room with Kathy, you'll need to mute and turn your volume off. Don't worry, we've had the same issues here. We've finally got it settled and hopefully we're out.
Oh, is that better?
Yes.
Better.
Is that better?
Yes, that is better. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. In response to your question, Michael, our competitors, obviously there is a number of competitors in the market in that class 2 to 5 space, but we do have some significant corporate clients that are providing repeat business, including local authority and civil construction particularly. We also work with a number of transport companies and logistics, and that's a growing space for us. So we've got in our training group, we've got 2 to 3 trainers, so we can actually scale up to meet demand. So in answer to your question, it's certainly a growth area of our business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from our team?
Just
Councillor Belsky.
Mute. Yes, I thank you for that report. I think it's one of the better reports that I've ever been in front of, and congratulations. But I also want to congratulate you on maintaining the assets the building assets, and that's an awful, incredible amount of Lycon that you've taken off the roofs. And maintenance is a huge issue that it's basically creeps up on you, and you don't realize that this is deteriorating at such a rate. But no, thank you for that. I just wondered if you had a plan in place to perhaps spray the roof once a year with with wet and forget, or whatever the products are out there, just so that Lycon doesn't get a hold again. Thank you.
Yes, we've got a new preferred supplier, Steve, in terms of our cleaning and ancillary services, Clearview. And they have, next week, they spray that whole roof, and then it becomes much easier moving forward. So, in deferred maintenance, as you would well know, you've got to do the hard yards first and then put a program in place of maintenance. So definitely everything we're doing, we're adding value with ongoing maintenance and planning accordingly. So yeah, we feel that we're on a positive path. There's just quite a lot of deferred maintenance that we need to look at. So it's a matter of doing the urgent stuff first.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship, again. Just a couple of things on the driver training instructors. Are they employed or contractors?
The contractors are independent contractors.
Yeah, beautiful.
We bring in from time to time.
Yeah, thank you. The other point I'd like to make is in support of Councillor Campbell's comments around a few trees and a bit of beautification of the park in terms of playing the long game. Somewhere in amongst my murky past, I've picked up dialogue around the Hawke's Bay showgrounds being actually under threat for urban intensification, you might say. Now that probably is not going to go away in the Hawke's Bay, and I think, looking to the future, I think we would all hope that Manfield would never fit into that category. But I did read something recently, probably in the last 6 months, around some sort of activity around the Hawke's Bay showground. So whether anything comes to pass on that or not, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something to consider in terms of the beautification and providing shade and, a more substantive environment for those equestrian events. So there was just a bit of a support for Councillor Campbell's comment on that, really.
Thank you. Any final questions, comments? Steve, Councillor Belsky.
Just to add to the trees, my son was at Timaru the other day, Timaru Boys College, and back in 1935, I should know the history, but I don't quite know it. But there was a runner that ran in the German Olympics, and he got a gold medal. And I think it was 1935, and Hitler gave him acorns from the Black Forest in Europe. And these acorns now, oaks are really producing some acorns, and my son's got us some, and I've given some to Michael Burke. But if Manfield wanted something a little bit unique, well, they can let me know. But I'd pass that as oak tree from the Black Forest in Europe. Might be quite a bit unique. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can see that the challenge will be the placement of the trees to not limit potential for the open spaces and current users and also potential users. So that's a challenge. So, but I like the idea of asking the community to donate a tree, and yeah, I think that's got some merit. So thank you for your report and for the comments. Very positive report given the environment that we've been in. So well done to the whole team. So going back to the recommendation, we have one on page 20. I'm happy to move that the Manfield Park Trust 6-month report to the 31st of December 2021 be received. Seconded by Councillor Ford. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? That motion is carried. Thank you. So thank you, Kathy, and your team. Is there any final comments you wanted to make? And also from your other board members, my apologies, I didn't give you the opportunity to add any comments that you wanted in that space. No? Excellent. Keep up the good work and look forward to the next 6 months of progress. So well done.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on in our agenda, the item 11.2 has been withdrawn from today's agenda by our Chief Executive, and a full, more detailed report will come back to Council on the 19th of May. So going to 11.3 on page 46. Now I'm going to ask our acting CE Hamish to give us an update. We understand that this may not be needed.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is correct. The organisers of this event have given us notice that due to scheduling conflicts, they are not looking to run this event any further. The other events that were happening have seen that their number of registrations has been a lot less than what they would have expected. So it's not going to proceed. So I'll be asking Your Worship if we can also withdraw this item from the agenda as well.
Thank you. So happy to withdraw that item from today's agenda. That is unfortunate, but I guess that's the climate that we're operating in, and hopefully they can get that back and get it sorted for next time.
Yeah, and I don't pretend to know the exact reasons for the scheduling clashes, but I can only assume that with the COVID delays and events being postponed, there's probably a scramble to sort of get as many things going, and things may have just been lost in communication between the various event organisers. So we'll look to get them back in at a later date or next year.
So thank you for that.
Councillor Short's got a question.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Even though that item has been withdrawn, it did raise a point that I think we need to make sure that we keep in mind. Before it was withdrawn, I contacted Amy just to see if there'd been any feedback at all about that proposed road closure, and there wasn't. And I suspect it was because the only place that was advertised was the Fielding Rangitikei Herald. And as we know, they'd had some distribution issues. Just to keep in mind for any future public notices, we need to be a little bit broader than just the community newspaper, and perhaps that could be something on our Facebook page, or a letter to the community committee that's closest that could be involved.
Thank you. Good point. Yes, we need to make sure that people are aware of it and informed.
Right.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. It's actually a really good point that the councillor brings up. Many of us in town don't receive the they haven't received it for some time. So therefore, yeah, simply, I haven't seen a delivered copy for, I'd probably say close to half a year now.
Really?
And it's just worth noting, particularly in that publishing point of view, that we, that I just reinforced the council.
Thank you. So that's interesting that it's not just rural who's been affected. We know why that is the case.
Yeah.
So certainly I'll raise it with the editor, because that is our, at the moment, that's our only hard copy way of getting information out. So it needs to be operating and being received. So thank you for that.
If I may, too, through the chair,
Councillor Marsh.
it's interesting in the fact that Global HQ also used that same printer and distribution agent. They haven't had any changes. There's been a seamless transition.
Global HQ have just changed their printer.
Yes, they went straight to Lower Hutt. Yeah,
They've gone to stuff.
carried on. So.
But Councillor Casey's right. I also haven't had it for yonks. And every now and then I will actually get the Guardian.
Oh, you get the Guardian.
You get the Guardian every now and then. Yeah, that's very sporadic as well, though.
Thank you. It is something that is of concern. We hear it from the community. So I will raise that with the right people and see if we can get it back on track. So we move to 11.4. This is our submission to the draft regional public transport plan. Kathy, I'll hand it over to you, and then I understand Lisa's here as well.
Yeah, I saw Lisa on the screen, but there she is.
There she is. Welcome, Lisa.
Yeah, so we're just seeking your approval on the draft submission for Horizons Draft Regional Public Transport Plan. And Lisa, as always, has pulled the information together and will talk you and take you through it in detail.
Thank you. Welcome, Lisa. Hand it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors, colleagues. Would you like me to give you an overview of what the draft submission contains, or are you happy to take it as read?
Yeah, if you could just take us through the highlights.
Sure, absolutely. So the submission starts with just some scene setting statistics about the Manawatū District that are relevant to public transport provision. So that focuses on our high population growth rate and our ageing population, and draws attention to the lack of transport options available for our rural villages. And the submission's generally in support of the vision for the Regional Public Transport Plan, but notes that for public transport to be the preferred mode of transport and between urban areas, there needs to be a service available to our villages. And the vision will be unachievable without a substantial increase in funding from central government. And we also suggest consideration of harmonised rates for public transport through the next Horizons long-term plan. The submission supports the 6 objectives in the draft Regional Public Transport Plan, particularly the accessible objective, which relates to equitable access to public transport across the region. We reiterated our earlier advice that procurement needs to consider more than just fiscal matters as well. Our submission commends Horizons on the new fielding orbiter service. I'm keen to know if anyone has had any feedback on the new service as you've been out and about, because it would be nice to include some of that within the submission. So that's sort of one point I'd like some feedback on, because there was no patronage data available at the time that the Regional Public Transport Plan was published, because the service was only introduced this year. The draft submission expresses a desire to work with Horizons to progress the investigations into and implementation of public transport services within the rural villages of the Manawatū. And just yesterday, I received the submission from Neighbourhood Support, and that's been prepared on behalf of themselves, and also the what does it say? Behalf of Neighbourhood Support Manawatū and the Manawatū Rural Community Transport Steering Committee. So I've got that submission in front of me now. So I think it would be good to add into our submission that we support their submission as well. Essentially, theirs is saying that they want to increase, to bring forward the regional services for Manawatū District. So it's currently, I think, scheduled for 2027-28, and they're asking to bring that forward to July 2022. And they've included in their submission some estimates of the cost for that service, and have noted the policies within the Regional Public Transport Plan that service contributes to. So I'm keen to support their submission, and I can circulate a copy of that to you all if you would like. So that's sort of the next part of our submission, is just expressing a desire to work with Horizons and the work that's been done by the Manawatū Rural Community Transport Steering Committee to try and bring that work forward. And we've requested to speak at the hearing, so that's scheduled for the 9th and 10th of June, and I'm keen for an indication of who might wish to attend that hearing. And I also would like some confirmation as to who the representatives are from our council on the Passenger Transport Committee. In my report, you'll see that I understood it was Mayor Helen and Matthew Mackay. I've since spoken to Matthew, who's back from leave, and he said that no, he's only been a member of the Fielding Bus Review Advisory Group that I was also involved in. So I am keen to know who our representatives are, so that we can make sure that our submissions are aligned with any conversations that those members have been a part of.
Thanks, Lisa.
I'm pleased to know I've been replaced, Your Worship, and I'm quite thankful.
Councillor Hadfield is our official representative on the Passenger Transport Committee,
It's a life membership.
A life membership.
Still is.
And myself, yes, and Matt has helped us on the operational side. You wanted some feedback around the bus service. Anecdotally, I understand the Woodlands, the people in the villas are using it. They're using it as group outings, that they might decide to go have a coffee in town, so they jump on board. So they're finding that very useful. But I still would like to somehow see in here so that it doesn't come back to bite us. I'm still concerned about the fact that we have two big buses following each other around town. And we raised that at the passenger transport meeting over and over again about the environmental impact, the cost, etc., of having two big buses that are seldom quarter full, driving around the town. And they are big buses when you see them on the corners of some of our streets trying to negotiate. And the other one that I'm going to keep on about it, is the fielding bus needs to be identified as the fielding bus. In my view, it needs to be brightly coloured and have some local messages on it. And we also pushed really hard for that and got nowhere. But, you know, and as I've been going into other communities, I've noticed their buses, they are quite different. They're interesting, they're bright colours. And I'm thinking, you know, is this just because Horizons are stuck with their contractor through their tender process? You know, why isn't there a willingness to actually look at how we can up the image of our bus, particularly the new fielding bus? And I'll be keen to see something in there to stress that again, because if you recall, this is only a 2-year trial, and you know, based on, well, we did see some numbers early on, they weren't that flash. And somehow we've got to raise the awareness of it. Open it up for questions. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship, and I fully agree with your comments. I think I'd like us to be continue to push for a distinction between the connector and the orbiter services, and you know, look, at the end of the day, we've got an orbiter running pretty efficient service around town. And all the big bus going to Palmy should be a connector, in my view. And I think part of the problem is the fact that we've got two big buses running around creating confusion. My view is that we should just ask our senior management team to dip into one of their slush funds and just paint the bus, do it themselves, not wait for Horizons. It's offer to pay for it. Let's actually paint the bus, make a statement, and actually so that it's clear to our community what the orbiter is. And let's try and get some sensibility into the discussion around having a connector. I mean, for goodness sake, if you want to go to Tauranga in an aeroplane from Palmerston North, you've got to fly to Auckland and change planes. Well, how hard is it to change a bus from the orbiter to jump on a bus to go to Palmerston North? And I just think we need to make some efficiencies in that area. And I wonder whether we can do that in our submission. The other thing I find around this that worries me a little bit is the affordability, the ongoing affordability of public transport, and I guess the motive behind, or what is the purpose or reason of public transport. My view is in a heavily subsidised environment, we're actually providing a service for people that actually have no other means of transport. That's the principal reason from my perspective. And also given just remembering that one of the great pushes for the fielding orbiter service was for our elderly residents, and that was part of the business case. So public transport has its limitations while it's so heavily subsidised by taxpayers and ratepayers. So we've got to do the best we can with what we've got. And this won't surprise you, the emphasis on mode shift to me is slightly overstated. And without going into a big discussion, I think I'll leave it at that, because if we're going to go to electric buses, the capital cost of that machinery is massive. And, you know, things are happening in the green hydrogen field. And I think we, or Horizons, actually need to be patient And being aspirational isn't actually always the best for either our taxpayers or ratepayers. So I'd like to see a little bit more long-term, how do I put it? Rather than being aspirational, let's look at the long-term game. Let's wait, the hydrogen filling station, I understand, is about to be built in Palmerston North Airport. And so let's actually not worry about the electric buses so much. Let's play the long game and actually not push all this aspirational stuff, which is only going to involve extra cost to a higher subsidy cost, extra cost to our ratepayers and taxpayers. So other than that, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Once it's decided what the orbiter bus is going to be, whether it's the one that we have now that remains or whether, we do upgrade, as Grant was saying, wouldn't it be great to see something like a Joe McMenamin mural on the bus to make it stand out? And maybe there is some funding that could be available through Creative Communities. Janine could probably guide us in that direction. It's been a challenging time to collect data on transport at the moment because of COVID. I have noticed it, well, probably last term, noticed a lot of high school kids on the bus. And perhaps we've had a nice spell of weather and people don't mind walking, but once the weather changes and COVID improves, hopefully we'll see some increased patronage there. I also just wanted to comment on the Manawatū Rural Transport proposal that's been put together by Neighbourhood Support, Ellie. Lisa, I'm actually on that steering group, so I could probably offer to be one of the councillors that attended if you like. Council funded the business case for that one, and I'd really just like to acknowledge the work that Ellie Thompson has put into that. And it's if Lisa does circulate that, it's about a 44-page report, very extensive survey. But as always with these things, people say they will use it, but will they? So I guess that's something we're going to have to wrestle with Horizons is, if the service was also put in place, how we ensure that it is used. But what she is proposing is a bit different. She's looked at other transport services around the country in similar sized communities in the South Island and things. And it's a more of an on-demand service rather than a set route service. So it'll be interesting to see how Horizons receive that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good comments to add. Councillor Casey.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. May come as a surprise to yourself and Councillor Hatfield, that I fully agree with your comments this morning. It's a win. And also too, I think just as well as regards to hydrogen, if you see the likes of Toyota dabbling in hydrogen, that means there's a very strong indicator that manufacturing of vehicles and buses and trucks will be that way towards hydrogen. So I think if there's some comment around that, that'll be good, and absolutely fully endorse the comments around buses connecting and also being marked as the fielding bus. You're absolutely on the money with that, and I would encourage those speakers to speak to that. So well done.
Thank you. Any further comments, discussion? No? Okay. Councillor Ford.
Yeah, if I may, well, a lot of these things, we make a lot about ageing population and the fact that we're full of old people. We're not. We're approximately, apart from the councillor to my left, of course, but we are a smidgen over the national average, as I understand it, in terms of number of over 65s living in the Manawatū District. And when you look, and I think the maximum difference is probably 16% for New Zealand, 18% for Manawatū District. And those percentages actually come from two different data sources, so they could even be closer. And you look at the projections out to 2040, and we're talking, I think, about approximately 21% thereabouts. When I look for the projections, admittedly, it's 2048 for New Zealand, it's 21 to 26%. So I just think we've got to be careful. The other thing is we've got a lot of children here, which really helps balance that up. So what we're short of is 20 to 30-year-olds. So we just need to be careful that we don't get too carried away. Foxton Beach, for example, there's a heck of a lot more over 65s than there are in the likes of Fielding or Manawatū District. I'm just saying, yes, we're a smidgen over, but let's not overcook it in terms of our comments.
Thank you. So are you suggesting that we could, while we might soften that, it's worth adding something about the increased number of school age students, because potentially they're users for the service?
That's a good idea. Yep. And just when we speak to it, there's a danger, I think, that we make ourselves out to be a great big retirement village, and we're a long way away from that.
I fully agree with that.
Thank you.
It's wow,
We're doing well.
great letter day.
Thank you. And I recall, Lisa, last time Stacey gave us an economic update, we had the highest number of school age children in the district for I think on record. So we can use some of that data to add into it.
Yes, absolutely. I can contact Stacey and ask for a copy of that.
Excellent, thank you.
Your worship.
No.
Also, the Youth Council decided on Monday night that they would also put in a submission. So, because of the growing number of youth.
And so their submission will be on the numbers of youth that potentially can use the service.
I'm not quite sure if they have decided what their submission would be on.
Okay.
I know that our meeting this week to do that.
Okay. Excellent. Heather, do you know what the content, what the theme of it is likely to be? Just so we could perhaps mention it and support it.
Sorry, I can't comment.
I was at the last meeting on Monday night. They talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
It was basically in support of, my understanding was it's more around the support of more public transport for younger people.
They are using it, which was, I'll admit I was surprised at, and they are using it, and there was probably only 2 or 3 that hadn't used it, the rest of them had used it.
So I think it would be worth adding, making a reference to the Youth Council submission in support of that.
Yeah.
and also to making sure, just probably working with them to ensure that if they're on the same page as us, that we can actually reflect that in the 2 submissions and they are complementary.
I think getting vague is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Great. So sorry, Lisa, there's a few things in there, but they're all positive. So that's good. And I've made a note to have a look at creative communities in regards to whether a submission to paint our bus is an option for us. I was also going to go and talk to one of the businesses in town that does that kind of work to get an idea of cost and how else it might be funded. It could be, you know, we could get some businesses to sponsor it. I don't know. There's other ways. So let's look into it. Okay. So, sorry, Lisa, was there something you wanted to add?
I was just going to say that while we were speaking, I had a message come to me from a colleague saying that we could wrap the bus, which would be cheaper and would be easier to remove.
That's right.
So like you were mentioning, there are other options.
Yes, that's why Custom Art down in Mahanui Street, they do the trucks all over New Zealand. So I was going to get an idea of what that might cost. Thank you. So we go to the recommendation on page 49. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Hadfield, that's your space.
Oh, just let me get to page 49. Page 49, here we go. Yep, that council's, oh, here we go, recommendations 1. The draft submission and Annex A be approved, subject to any changes agreed at this meeting by lodgement.
Thank you. So we have a mover, have a seconder, please. Councillor Casey, thank you.
Can I just ask a question, Your Worship?
Thank you. Yes.
It doesn't say in the recommendation, it doesn't make reference to what we're talking about. Should we have reference to the Horizons Drive Regional Public Transport Plan in the resolution?
Yeah, actually, good point, because if you take the recommendation in isolation, what does it actually refer to? So Ellie, are we able to add that in there? Annex A of the Horizons Draft Regional Public Transport Plan submission. Thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Right, so no late items, so we can go straight to our public excluded, and I'm happy to move that public be excluded from the following parts of proceedings for this meeting, namely the appointment of trustee for the Manawatū Community Trust. Seconded by Councillor Ford. I'll put the motion. All those raise their hands. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Just take a moment there.